There was so much hope and optimism for the Witcher Netflix series. There was a loyal fan base from the games and the books that wanted to see a live-action show. And Game of Thrones had just ended, leaving a fantasy hole to be filled. Then when people found out Henry Cavill would be playing the role of Geralt, excitement grew. He was an A-list actor at the time coming off Superman, bringing more eyes to the new Netflix show. This seemed to be a perfect storm. You have loyal fans, you were fulfilling a need, and you have A-plus talent attached to it. So what happened? Don't get me wrong, the show does get viewers, but it has steadily decreased since season 1. And with the departure of Henry as Geralt, it seems interest in the show is at an all-time low. So what went wrong with The Witcher? The major points that kind of track through all the seasons are they didn't follow the books, there's way too many POV characters, and it's just poorly written, it's just poorly made. I'll go into more details as we go through the seasons. So we start with season 1. This is by default the best season of the show. It at least tries and follows the books and expands on Yennefer and Ciri's backstories. For the most part, the books are through Geralt's eyes, so we really don't know about Yennefer's beginnings at Aretuza and what she went through. With a show like this, you can't really just focus on Geralt the entire time, so the next logical people to have as your POV characters are Yennefer and Ciri. They are the most well-known and important characters with Geralt in the series. The main problem season 1 had was the timeline issues. Geralt, Ciri, and Yennefer were all at different points in time for the majority of season 1, though it was switching back and forth between all three like it was happening in the same time frame. Like in episode 4, Geralt is talking with Ciri's parents before they marry, while Ciri is running around the woods in the same episode. It confused people, and many people came to my videos and voiced that. Now, the reason for the weird timeline was because the books season 1 was based on were comprised of short stories. So there wasn't going to be an easy way to adapt the books no matter what. But I think for the audience, they should have just made it linear, make it go in order. When you're just starting a fantasy series with a wide range of characters and a lot of them having strange names, it's hard to keep everything straight. You're trying to learn the world, and now you are also trying to ask the audience to keep the timeline in mind. It's just a lot. It would have also cut down on Ciri running around the woods for the majority of the season. That kind of goes into the poorly crafted territory, but it wasn't unforgivable. I think there was optimism after season 1. The timeline thing won't be an issue anymore because the books are more normal. Things should be better. So we get to season 2 and we were wrong. Now the first episode of season 2, A Grain of Truth, is probably the best episode in the series. But it goes downhill from there fast. It very loosely follows the books, there are way too many POV characters, and some story choices make no sense. The POVs in season 2 just don't make sense to me. I'm fine with the big three, but when you start adding in Fringilla and Cahir and Francesca and even Istrid, it gets a little much. It dilutes the story of what it should be about. And another part of it, it's just not very interesting. Like having to watch Fringilla and Francesca and Sintra for an entire season was not very enjoyable. Another thing the show did was get rid of the love triangle between Geralt, Yennefer, and Triss. Now granted, in the books, it's not nearly what it is in the games. In the games, it's very much part of the story. Whereas in the books, it's mentioned a few times that Geralt and Triss hooked up. Triss is still very enthralled with Geralt, and Yennefer is very annoyed that this happened, that her best friend hooked up with her off-again, on-again lover. Anyways, it was very successful in the game, so you would think they would try to do it in the TV show. But that's not what they did. They tried to do an Istrid, Yennefer, Geralt love triangle instead. And nobody really cared. Istrid did sleep with Yennefer in the books, and Geralt and him actually did have a bit of a showdown where they were going to fight one another to see who gets Yennefer, which was actually very entertaining to read, but we never get that in the show. They have a little bit of an interaction, they kinda don't like each other, and they move on. From what I can tell from the show, it seems that Triss and Istrid may be a thing now. So they're moving away from the love triangles altogether. Don't get me wrong, it's not vital to the story, but I would rather have more of that than the Aretuza council meetings or Nilfgaard stuff. Yennefer's storyline in season 2 was also so bad. She loses her powers at the end of season 1 because she overextended herself using fire magic. Her whole season 2 arc is getting her powers back, which is fine, but how she gets them back at the end of the season makes no sense. She sacrifices herself for Ciri, which then gives her her powers back? Because after she slices her wrists, she's able to get Volithmir into her body and out of Ciri's body because of reasons? Like the whole end of season 2 was just nonsense and coincidences. Basically how they fixed Yennefer's problem was magic. And they don't have to explain anything with that because it's magic, which is just lazy. But the craziest thing they did was have Jaskier call out the audience. A man goes up to Jaskier and tells him that one of his ballads was confusing. So this is an allegory for Season 1. Jaskier being the writers and the man being the audience, us. Jaskier then yells at the man saying he is stupid for not understanding his ballad. So basically, people who didn't understand the timeline jumping in Season 1 are stupid. At least that is what the writers think. This is just dumb on their part. Like calling out your audience for something that was widely believed is crazy. Just move on. The fact they were that petty to dedicate a whole monologue about it is insane. So the goodwill they got from Season 1 completely diminished, but things can't get worse, right? Enter The Witcher Blood Origin. This is one of the worst things I have ever watched. It completely throws off lore and future seasons of The Witcher, but it is also just so poorly written. This is an actual line from Episode 1. 7 estranged warriors who come together to fight an unstoppable empire, bring humans and monsters to the world via the conjunction of spheres, and create the very first version of a Witcher. It's just so bad. Like, this mini-series was pointless and changed so many things for no reason. Like the Wild Hunt, Eridan, all changed. They got rid of the whole other race of elves, the An-El, which are different from the elves we see on the continent. It's just a mess and stupid, and I don't even want to talk about it anymore. It's terrible. So we move on to Season 3, and while it does follow the books more, it's too little too late. The damage is done. It has the same problems the prior seasons had, too many POV characters no one cares about, but now we have a whole Redanian storyline that's just not very interesting. Fringilla's storyline just drags. More Aretuza meetings, and even the stuff they do adapt, it's just done so poorly. Like, the big moment for Season 3 is the Thanedd coup. I compare it to the Red Wedding for The Witcher. It is my favorite part of the books, and they just butchered it. They tried this weird way of filming it where it repeats itself a bunch of times, but you get more glimpses of what is happening. So it's like a slow burn, getting a little more info every time. And I just hated it. Just film it normally. Like, Geralt has these long speeches in the books, has a very dry sense of humor and is a bit witty, and there's just none of that in the show, and especially in this episode. Like, the grunting thing was funny in Season 1, but God, you gotta move on from that. And then the big battle scene in the next episode was just terrible. It looked so dumb, it was like they were playing dodgeball, in a big ballroom throwing stuff at each other. There's also a point in the season where Geralt cries, and it's like, no, that shouldn't happen. So I guess, in summary, The Witcher is just a poor adaptation. I don't know if the writers think they are more clever than Mr. Andrzej Sapkowski or what, but it feels like sometimes writers don't like what they are adapting and are trying to make the story theirs, which is a poor way to adapt anything. People want to see their favorite sections from the book to the screen, not some random person's version. I understand there are limitations when adapting things from the book to screen. You don't have an unlimited budget, but that's when you make the changes, when you have to. Whereas with The Witcher, it seems like they did it whenever they wanted to fit the story they wanted to tell, not what Sapkowski had envisioned. So what do you think? Will you watch Season 4 of The Witcher? Leave it down in the comments below, and if you want more Witcher content, please subscribe and like the video. Check out the Twitter link in the description below, and as always, have an awesome day.